Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be wrapping up the month of March, talking about all the different things that I read. I did not read as much as I normally did because I live in the United States, and March is when everything kind of happened with the coronavirus. This is where our lives changed very drastically, and so there were about 2 weeks that I just didn't read anything. But I did get some done, so let's jump in and talk about them. The very first book that I read is How to Speak Dragonese by Cressida Cowell, the third book in the How to Train Your Dragon series. This is an elementary school series, and I would not be reading this other than the fact that my older child gets to pick out one book a month for me to read, and this was his choice. Now, I wouldn't generally read this because it's elementary school, and I don't generally like elementary school books. And in this book, there's a lot of things that I didn't like that were because it's elementary school. It's an elementary school book. So I thought that, let's talk about the storyline. Our main character is Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III, and he is learning how to be a Viking. And so one of his lessons is how to raid other ships, and he accidentally chooses the wrong one, gets kidnapped, saves some nano dragons, finds out that there's this plot to get rid of all the dragons, and now he's got to stop them. On the surface, that sounds like a really interesting plot. I did not like the execution in general, but also specifically, it hit along a lot of the story beats that were from like the first two. It just felt very like not different enough from the first two books, which is very much an elementary school thing, right? Like they're going to be very similar. There was also some elementary school humor in this that I did not appreciate. So I did not, overall, I just felt very meh about this book. The one thing I did like is that we got introduced to our very first female Viking in training. And so I was very glad to see a female, because up until this point, it's been a bunch of boys. But other than that, I just did not love this book. After that, I did read The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet by Bernie Sue and Kate Rorick. This is a companion novel to the Lizzie Bennet Diaries series here on YouTube. And both of these are a retelling and modernization of Pride and Prejudice. A very, very good one, by the way. This is not a standalone. You need to have watched the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, or at least be reading it at the same time. And that's actually what I did. I did it chronologically. So I would watch a video, read a diary entry, watch a video, read a diary entry. And that really helped with the first half of the videos, because I don't love the first half. I don't really love any of the characters, but I know it's set up so that the ending ends up becoming amazing. But like the second half of the videos, I really loved, and I just wanted to keep watching it, so I did not want to read as much. So that was unfortunate. On the plus side, I did gain a lot of insights into like the characters and what was going on. However, I don't think I'm ever going to do this chronologically again, because I just did not end up loving it as much as I had hoped. For anybody that has seen the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, this book does smooth out some of the slight rough edges from the series. Like in the series, it does feel kind of like all of a sudden Lizzie is fine with Darcy, but we see in this book that it was actually like a much more gradual thing that was just off camera. So I really, really, really liked that. And I do enjoy this book as much as I do enjoy this series in general, and I highly recommend both. After that, I did pick up Late Eclipses by Seanan McGuire, the fourth book in the Toby Day series. I do have a full review of this up already, so I'll link it up above and down below so that you can go check this out. But this is essentially a series about October Day, who is a half-fae, half-human changeling knight, and she tends to get called in to deal with weird situations. Now, in this volume, one of her allies has taken ill, which is very strange, and so Toby is investigating, and then another ally gets ill, and then an old enemy shows up, and everything kind of hits the fan. So she's got to deal with it. I did not like the first 100 to 150 pages as much, because it was a little bit slow, because Toby was just trying to figure out what was going on. But after that, it was a downhill slide to the end. Loved the second half of this book so much. And this, more than anything, is is the book where we realize that Seanan McGuire had to have started this series with a lot of world building already done, with a lot of character, you know, knowing her characters really, really well and having a lot of the plot already kind of figured out, because it all kind of comes together into this huge reveal for this book, and while she's also laying down clues for the next big thing. I thought that was amazing, and this is where like you kind of realize it's not just another urban fantasy series. So I highly recommend this series, and if so, get to this one at least if you can. After that, I did read Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is a portal fantasy in which children obviously find doors in this world, go through to another world, complete some quests, and sometimes get kicked back to this world. They end up at Miss Eleanor's School for Wayward Children, where they are kind of taught how to be okay living in this world when all they want is to go back to the world that they had traveled to. Now we are following our main character of Nancy. She is obviously one of these children that got kind of sent back, and she is extremely unhappy, but she is sent to this school, and almost immediately after she starts, bodies turn up. There's been murders, so we've got a murder mystery. I love Nancy. Nancy is amazing. She is, she was sent to an underworld, and she was a living statue for the Lord of the Underworld, and she loved it. And I like the character building on this, because when most people's flight or fight response would kick in, she freezes, like point blank, and like freezes so well that people actually comment on it, that she's like a statue, which makes sense given the world that she went to. I like that because of that, she's specifically described by other characters as being very strong, deceptively so. And I love that Nancy is asexual. Canonically asexual, she says it. It's very beautiful, queer rep. This has very beautiful writing. It's not particularly lyrical, but it is very beautiful. It is a fast-paced, nice plot, and the only downside is that there's not a ton of world building in this, but honestly that's because it's a 165-page novella. There is no time to do massive amounts of world building. The plus side is this is a reread, and I have read the entire series that is currently out. The world building does build up through the series, which is good. I just wish there was a little bit more in this one, but there's understandably not. After that, I did read volumes 7, 8, and 9 of The Wicked and the Divine by Kieron Gillen. This is a series that is about, every 90 years, 12 gods return as young people, and they're superstars, and in like 2 years, they're all dead. Now, I'm going to start with volume 8, because volume 8 is actually not part of the overarching storyline. It collects a bunch of one-off issues. So the first 4 issues actually are devoted to going back and looking at previous pantheons, and obviously those give some more in-depth look, some background for some of the things that are going on present day. And then there has the one Christmas special and then the funnies. So the first 3 issues where we're looking at other pantheons, they were great. I liked them. They were interesting. They added some background. The end of issue number 3 gives us a lot more understanding to what's to come in the next volume, in the last story volume. And then issue number 4 was text. It was like a story, you guys, with a few comics thrown in. Now, I understand why they chose to do that, and it's because it was such an expansive story that they needed to tell, and they just didn't have enough space to do it as a comic. However, I don't appreciate it. I did not like reading it, and honestly, the amount of information we got, I don't think was worth having to read all that text. And then we get to the 5th issue in this bind up, and it was the Christmas special, and it was a bunch of vignettes of things that we knew happened but didn't see it on page. So like various relationships and this little scene here and this little scene there. And they were all brought together into one issue. Just a word of warning, the Christmas special is not safe for work, you guys. Like, there's been some nudity throughout this series, but not a ton. The Christmas special has a significant amount of nudity. Just putting it out there. And then the last issue in this volume is the funnies, and it was a lot of different writers and illustrators, artists were brought in to draw little vignettes that were funny, and they were mostly poking fun at the series itself, and they were amusing. I liked them. Overall, this was a good volume, however, completely not necessary to read this to understand the actual like overarching story of this series. So it's a really great addition if you love the series, but just not necessary. So let's talk about volumes 7 and 9, the last two story volumes of this series. So volume 7, the Mothering Invention. This is where everything in the series really comes together, and we get a huge chunk of the bigger picture of all these clues that were laid down for the main storyline finally kind of makes sense from in the event. You know, we see the events in this volume and it just makes so much more sense. Additionally, it gives us some more, it reveals a few things where not related to the main storyline that help make other things make sense from previous volumes. I hope that makes sense. So there are other reveals as well, smaller reveals. And then in this volume 9, okay, we get the finer details. We get, you know, all the different story parts. I'm a little fuzzy on all of the how and what and why. But I found that I didn't actually need all of the tiny details to really enjoy this story. And honestly, the ending, especially the last issue of this volume, were just lovely. Overall, I think that if you can hold out to the end, go into this knowing that some of it's not going to make sense until the very end. If you can hold out for that, I think it's worth it. Also, additionally, the plotting throughout the entire series is actually really good looking back. So again, when I was reading this, occasionally it would feel like we were taking these little detours and I didn't understand why. So the story kind of felt a little meandering. But now that I've read the last two volumes, I'm just like, oh, it makes sense. Like they had to do that like little meandering side plot for everything to make sense. And so looking back, I do think that the pacing is actually pretty nice. I am still thinking about this ending, which is like one of the highest compliments I can give a series. And so even though this isn't my normal cup of tea for what I like to read, I did really enjoy it. And so if this does sound interesting to you, I think that you will probably enjoy it as well. And then lastly, I read Renegade by J.A. Souders, the first book in the Elysium Chronicles. In this book, we are following our main character of Evelyn Winters, and she lives in a biodome underneath the sea, and she is being groomed to be the next leader of her people. And she very quickly realizes that her memories are being tampered with, and so she is trying to escape to the surface. You guys, this was such an interesting concept. The writing itself was so interesting. Like how J.A. Souders wrote this book to let us know that her memories are being messed with, even as she kind of didn't, was very well done. The slow reveal of the madness of our antagonist, I thought was really well done. The pacing was good. Like overall, honestly, the main storyline, 4.5 stars. Easy. However, there's the love storyline too. And I'm going to get a little bit into spoilers, mostly talking about tropes. But if you do not want to be spoiled at all, you should probably click away because I really do need to talk about this. It's an insta-love. So a surface dweller actually comes down, and that's kind of how she realizes that her memories are being messed with. And it's insta-love between them. And like the really obnoxious kind of insta-love where they're like not infatuation, like where they legit think they're in love. And there's like demands of trust that are not on par with how long they've known each other. There is like confessions of love. There's like, even occasionally they have said things that are like echoes of wedding vows, like for better or worse, right? And you're just like, no, you've known each other for 3 days. 3 days. This is not the correct reaction to knowing somebody for 3 days. And it's a build-up because at the end, Evelyn has to do something that is actually very difficult to do, requires a lot of strength and willpower. And so we fall into that trope of, I can do anything because the strength, or because the power of love gives me the strength to. And I just kind of wanted to cry because that was terrible and I hated it. Especially given how amazing everything else was. It just made me really sad that that's the direction it went. And so overall, that romantic storyline brought my overall rating down to 3 stars because that's how bad it was. So I am not going to continue on in this series. However, because I liked so much of this book, if J.A. Souders ever puts anything else out, I will jump on it and read it. I'm just not going to continue with this. But that is it, you guys. Those are all the things that I read in the month of March. Please let me know down below, what did you read? Have you read any of these things? Let me know. And that's it. So until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.